What is consciousness? The live stream of consciousness is on a quest to unravel the mysteries of existence. Every episode, we ask the fundamental question that has captivated human minds for centuries. Is consciousness merely a product of our brains, or does it connect us to something greater? Explore the very fabric of our thoughts. Don't miss a moment. Expand your awareness and tap into the boundless potential that resides within you. Welcome to the live stream of consciousness.
Yes. Welcome to the live stream of consciousness. Once again, it is Thursday, October 19th. Well, not once again, it is October 19th. Well, I guess it is again October 19th, but Thursday is what I meant. Seems to just keep coming. Thursday. We are here at the live stream of consciousness. My favorite place to be. I am Michael Zinn, one of the creators of the live stream of consciousness. It's a place, a moment, a consciousness created consciously to be here and be here and have great conversations. I don't even know what I'm talking about. Always trying to come up with new stuff to describe what's going on here, but it is a moment of intention to be here, to have a good conversation, to welcome Tim and Ninja Kitty. As always, it's like the three of us have this commitment to get together for the last 2 years, every Thursday here, just hanging out and doing cool things, talking to some cool people. I think we've talked to some pretty cool people on this show, and we're going to continue that tradition tonight. Hopefully, my guest has not arrived in the green room yet, but I trust he will. I spoke to him earlier. He said he's going to be signing in just a minute. But my guest tonight is a really awesome fella I know personally. His name is Stefano Da Frè. He is an award-winning actor, filmmaker, director. He's got an interesting history. He graduated from the Neighborhood Playhouse in New York City, which is a famous acting program. And he studied acting for many years. Then he got the chance to act in a film directed by Ang Lee, who is a very famous director. The film is almost Taking Woodstock is the name of the film, and that was a great opportunity for Stefano to work as a professional actor on a professional set and experience the craft that he had been studying and kind of realized that it was a craft. I watched an interesting interview with him today with another friend, Russ Camarda, who's been on the show. Russ has a podcast called Art, Craft, and Truth Act, and it's talking to different artists about the craft of what they do, whether it's music or acting or filmmaking or whatever it is. There's always a craft involved in what you're doing. But anyway, my guest is arriving, so I'm excited about that. I know he's arrived in the backstage, so I'm excited about that. I want to say what's up to Hat Powser, who just arrived as well. What's up, Hat? So as I was saying, I know this fellow personally, but all of those great things that I just said. He's a award-winning actor, filmmaker, director, human being. He's an award-winning human being. He wins my award for being a cool dude. I see he's getting ready back there, so I'm going to let him settle down, and then I'm going to bring him on when he's ready to go. I think he's ready to go. It looks like he is, and I'm going to welcome to the live stream of consciousness, Mr. Stefano Da Frè. What's up, buddy?
Yes, Mike. So glad to be with you on this streaming consciousness moment for all of us together, praying on peace, praying on love, connection, just being authentic, which is a chance for sure that all of us can do a better job at and being more real.
That's right. It's a great sentiment, and I think that's part of the live stream of consciousness. The reason is to connect people, for me to connect with somebody who I'm interested in having a good conversation with, and then for whoever's tuning in to receive it, to receive it and be there with it in the moment. So Tim is out there in Brazil saying hola. I see Janice out there saying hello. We got Ninja Kitty. Welcome, Stefano. So I talked you up a little bit. I do have some stuff I want to share. I was doing some research trying to find some good clips and stuff. I know we've worked together on some different things too. And I found some stuff. I found a really nice trailer that I want to share. But I noticed it was 4 years old, so I wanted to make sure it was cool with you, because I know you've got some other great stuff too. I just wanted to make sure it was cool. So
it's totally cool. Whatever's in the past, this is it's a lesson as a director, and I think also as an actor, as an artist. Like, you have a trajectory, you get better as time goes on, and there's an arc to hopefully your career and to your life. But if you're going to put your name on something, you try to have the foresight that it's going to last for a long time. It'll last, maybe 10 years, 20 years, hopefully longer. And so I always thought, when I was making my first films, even the films that are available on Amazon Prime, even back in the day, just like, okay, would I be proud looking back at this and be like, okay, I'm proud of this. So you can go as old as you want. You can do a deep dive. You can find stuff, whatever you find.
You know what? I appreciate that, and I agree with it. And I actually I love watching old videos that I find of myself doing whatever it might be, playing in a band or doing this or that. And it's not always great, and it's not always something that I thought of, oh, would I be proud of this? And I'm not always proud of it, but I am always proud of it in the fact that that's what made me who I am. You know what I mean? Just like you were saying, it's kind of a piece of, my experience, and just a piece of my journey, right? Memorialized.
Yeah.
So I want to talk all about you. I want to share your greatness with my audience. But we're here at the live stream of consciousness, so we've got some business to take care of. I don't know why I got in the habit of calling it like the business that we got to take care of, but
because we got to get down to business. Otherwise, it's not real work. We got to get really down to business. Consciousness, getting down to consciousness is a real business. You got to tune the station to get into the right wavelength. So you're receiving well, and
that's what we're about to do. That's what we're about to do.
Business, and I will color commentate.
So let's tune into the same frequency, and let's hear what your take is, because I love to hear everybody's take on it. What is consciousness?
I think the fundamental question about consciousness comes down to two things, right?
Okay.
Is consciousness something that exists in the ether, in the world, or does it exist localized in the brain? If you believe that it's localized in the brain, a worldview is that the experience that you're having is informing your worldview, your emotions, your cerebral cortex.
Right.
Now, but if consciousness is something that is shared, that is outsized, sort of not independent and only contained inside the brain, then you open up a bunch of really weird questions, which are that we're sort of tapping into a frequency that we can all sort of get if our connection is cleaner, and you move into a better, riper, attuned sense of being tapped in, right?
Right.
I've always believed that consciousness was not just localized to the brain, that our brains were sort of like radios, and that but the wavelengths were always playing out there. I think that it's something along the lines of the way that fungi sort of communicate. Anyone who's had the psychedelic experience, and I've had it many times, of taking psilocybin and taking mushrooms and different mushrooms too, not just the ones that, there's many psychedelic mushrooms within that family. And recently I was on the experience of the Australian gold cap mushrooms. And right away that they're communicating with each other. They're telling you something. Uh,
Mhm.
Often sharing things with you that you may not want to see,
Mhm.
and so going in with an intention is really important. But
Mhm.
I'm deviating away from the main point, which is that fungi communicate with each other and
Mhm.
have a sort of consciousness in the way that they organize, um, in geographies and in the plant world.
Mhm.
So
Mhm. Mhm.
I think of consciousness sort of in that way, and it seems very relatable as a human being, having had that experience with psilocybin myself.
Okay, awesome. I love that answer. I'm going to go back to the first part of that answer, which
Yeah.
I love, which is kind of, okay, you can decide, is consciousness something that's localized within the brain, like a physical, is it a physical thing, right? Or chemical maybe within the brain. But like you said, that would mean that my experience is mine alone. My experience exists with me and disappears with me when I'm gone. And then the other idea that consciousness is kind of something that exists and our brains are able to tune into it, the different frequencies. I think that's more of kind of the belief that I go with, and what we talk about here. Kind of, we talk a lot about energy being everything, right? And so consciousness is really kind of maybe some form of energy, right? So
I think energy is a great word. It's just it's used quite a bit,
mhm,
and we don't really know what we mean. I mean, we have vibes when we meet people.
mhm,
Um, I think it's different. I think it's even greater than our human minds are figuring out than energy, right?
mhm, mhm, mhm,
It's a whole. It's another. It's like the difference between walkie talkies and like 5G. That's how
right,
I
right,
try.
right, right, right. I
That's
get it.
that's sort of the way that I'm looking at it in that sense, and I'm
I totally
trying to
get that.
sense that it's very uh, it's on another level, right?
Right.
And consciousness, that level of consciousness that we're talking about, is the type of consciousness that um, for anyone who's ever been fortunate or misfortunate enough to be with someone in the last moments that they're on the earth. I
Mhm,
had the experience. It was a great blessing to
mhm,
be the only person with my grandfather, and we were
mhm.
very
Wow.
close, and to be with him when he was dying,
Mhm, mhm,
and I remember and to be with him when he was dying, and I remember that um, to see him and that person go, you
yeah,
know,
yeah.
that that person was going,
Mhm,
and
mhm.
you could feel that experience immediately.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. No, I love the way you phrase that, because I feel the same way about my father, who I was in the room when he passed. And it's like you could only describe it as a blessing, right? Which is such a surprising way to even think, of that experience. Um, are you there? Did I lose you? You are frozen, my friend. I think I lost Stefano. I think he's frozen in the ether. That was a interesting circumstance. Hopefully he will figure it out. He will come back um, to us. Maybe sign in. I don't know if it's his bandwidth or my bandwidth. Um, I don't know if you guys are seeing me. Hopefully you are. Um, that's I guess the mystery of, okay, he disappeared. So I think you're seeing me because I'm seeing me. The mystery of technology and live broadcasting is you kind of, unless you have a big system with monitors and extra bandwidth to even monitor yourself, because you don't want to take the bandwidth to monitor yourself when you're using the bandwidth. You don't know. So hopefully Stefano will reconnect, because he is amazing. He's amazing. And actually, while we are waiting, I'm going to play his reel. I see Shari just joined us. What's up, Shari? Welcome back to the live stream of consciousness. We were just talking to Stefano, and I think he's having some bandwidth issues. He dropped out of the conversation, but I do have his reel here from Rosso Films International, which is his production company that he has with a partner. So I'll let him talk about that when he comes back. Hopefully he does come back, and if he can't get his bandwidth, maybe he calls on the phone. Excuse me, just had to wet my whistle. But yeah, let's take a look at Rosso Films International production reel.
Shown this week at the second annual Meet the Press Film Festival in collaboration with the American Film Institute. Joining me now are the documentary's directors. Visible horizon, right where it starts it ends. Oh, and then we start the end. Rosso Films International. I love a good reel. Stefano's back. Welcome back.
You know what? I thank God that I had my wife's iPad set up to like, you know what? I'm just gonna I'm like, for interviews, for any like television interviews and stuff like hits on news programs.
Yeah.
I'm always like, I gotta have a backup device.
Yeah.
Yes, perfect time to cue that.
So I know just as a video editor and somebody who understands a little bit about filmmaking, a reel is it's like a little bit of a portfolio that shows a bit of each thing, and to string together totally unrelated pieces and put a piece of music to it and have it feel like something is also a challenge. And I think that was a beautiful reel. So
thank you.
Good work. I know, again, I know from working with you how dedicated you are to the craft. It's not just like, hey, I'm an actor, I'm a filmmaker. You're like really like, you feel it, you live it, you breathe it. And I want to talk about all of that stuff, but there's one more thing I want to talk to you about. And I guess we have had some spiritual conversations about stuff. So I know you'll kind of have something to share, but I like to share a memory or a story of the moment you realized there was more to existence than what they teach in school, and even what they teach at home, usually, like, the normal stuff.
I remember it really, really well.
Awesome.
I was in college. I was living with my grandparents, and I was in Montreal. And I had been given just a random book about the book was called The Center of the Cyclone, and it was written about a guy. His name was John Cunningham Lilly, John C. Lilly, who was a huge person into psychedelics. I'd already, first of all, I had friends who were really into like Terence McKenna, and I always was probably the more quote unquote normal guy of the friends that were really weird. The more, I had a lot of different friend groups who were more traditional, but
Right.
I kind of gravitated towards ones who were really on the outer limits of their own consciousness. And some of that was self-destructive, and some of that was extremely brave. And so when you experience that and you're 19, 18, 20, you, before social media, thank God you got to just play in the sandbox without social media and just be a developing person without a camera on you. I had this book called The Center of the Cyclone that my friend Jason Mazinski gave me, and it was a story about a guy who had dolphins and worked with the army to figure out like ECCO, echo, sort of sonar communication, and he had worked with communicating interspecies communications between dolphins and people, and then he had also written about his experiences in sensory deprivation tanks. And when you're 19 years old, this like the word it felt so, God, it was so it was like nothing I had ever been exposed to. Nothing, nobody had ever talked about that stuff, and I didn't know anybody that was exposed to that stuff. And I remember there were a lot of people that this person had written about, and one of them was this Harvard psychologist called Richard Alpert, who later goes to India, does a lot of psychedelics and drugs, and then with Timothy Leary, and then goes to India and then gets transformed by this guru, Neem Karoli Babi, and comes back as Ram Dass. So I'm reading this book, and I don't hear about and think about Ram Dass till like 5 years later, but only when I'm like mapping out my life, my childhood, do I start to put pieces together that there were always a step in front of me. They were like they were foggy steps, but they were always steps. And before I went to acting school and before I went to film school, I studied philosophy, and I have a degree in it, and I took an honors degree in philosophy. So I was already a thinking person who was, looking for hungry. I think hunger for spirituality and a quest is huge. So John C. Lilly, the book is called The Center of the Cyclone by John C. Lilly, and he's phenomenal guy, and that just opened the door. I remember feeling like the world was 3-dimensional, or 4-dimensional or 5-dimensional. I remember feeling like there's a lot more to this world, and there's a lot more to my life, and what is
so just from reading the books, you were feeling these things?
Just that one book. Yeah.
Wow.
And it just sort of broke something, like I had enough of reading Descartes and enough, you had to take rationalism in this fall and empiricism in the winter, and I'm reading a lot of philosophers at school, and I'm doing well in school, but I'm reading something on the fringes that is not really what would be considered academic philosophy.
Right.
And it just broke. Like it was just culminating, and that was just enough to just break the dam into that world. And I was very into psychedelic teachings and thought, and into that aspect. And I really didn't take psychedelic mushrooms or LSD or anything for another 10 years after that. So
wow. Okay.
I didn't shortcut it even as fast as I thought I really wanted. I don't know. I felt there was enough there, in kind of seeking that I was looking for. Once I found that, then I found role models, and then obviously the next role model was Joseph Campbell. And so he had a lot of, Hero's Journeys is a famous one, but he had another one called Ethos, or it was a whole other much bigger package than the hero's journey, which is what everyone acclaims to. But I always try to find the stuff that the person is working towards. So why, what's the thing that brought them to that major thing that made them famous on PBS?
Gotcha. Okay.
And then that led to Carlos Castaneda's books, The Active Side of Infinity. Wayne Dyer was a huge
Wow.
person that impacted, and I got to meet Wayne.
Oh,
and
wow.
Then after meeting Wayne and reading Castaneda, and around the time that Wayne had published The Power of Intention, I went into a dive, and I was already living in New York. This is like 10 years later, into Ram Dass. And what I always tell my wife and my friends that I'm very intimately close with, and we talk about this subject, is that meeting Ram Dass was the first time I went from being a seeker to feeling full. I wasn't a seeker anymore. That was sort of going from teacher to teacher to teacher.
Right.
And there was some sense in my life that I had arrived for myself.
Okay.
Into some understanding. And but again, it's a spiritual journey, as you know, Michael. It is a very personal, non-linear path for everybody.
So I would think that it sounded like reading the book inspired you to do the psychedelics, but you said it wasn't for 10 years. So was
10
it
years.
So during those 10 years, was that when you were meeting those very spiritual people, Wayne Dyer and Ram Dass? Like, so you weren't even involved with psychedelics when you met those people?
No.
Wow.
No. I was not. I think well, Wayne wasn't really into drugs, and Joseph Campbell was into rituals, and he had a huge affinity for the Native Americans, and the Egyptians, obviously, as well, and a lot of biblical stories. But he wasn't particularly into drugs per se. And so there was a part of me that felt there was enough of an open lane to go there without all the chemical necessities. That there was enough there that the biochemistry existed inside of me. And so that was a 10-year period of meeting a lot of those teachers that I could spend the time really feeling my way through, right? Feeling my way through the exercise. But it was not through psychedelics. And I like that the first psychedelics I ever took, I must have been 27 or 28.
Okay.
I don't think I took. I actually remember that I had met Ram Dass first, and I remember telling Ram Dass about the first time that I took acid. And that was the first psychedelic experience I had, and I remember actually being very prepared, because many of my friends, when in that particular summer, in our late 20s, they were not prepared. They thought that it was a recreational drug. They didn't understand that they would be crying because their mother has terminal cancer. They didn't recognize that they didn't like themselves, and so that they would take off their clothes and have bouts of anger and shame for themselves. They weren't solid in their emotional ability to have a vessel, right? A mental, emotional vessel where things could pass through you, like lights, like stars, like different temperatures in a room. And if you're not prepared of how you dive in, you shouldn't take them. That's why, by the way, that's why drugs for kids, especially young people, first of all, I categorize, anybody in Gen Z below 25 years old watching, still kids, especially because you guys have grown up on a screen and you've been watched for so long. It's a scary feeling to let go.
A different development, for sure.
And so drugs for kids are not cool because you have to spend a long time to figure out who you are. And then once you have some semblance of that, then you can disappear into the idea that we're all interconnected. But it happens in that trajectory. It's not like you're 16 years old and it's like we're all the same. It's like, no, you've jumped too many steps. We're not at the 9th inning. We're not at the 8th inning. You have to play your way through your development.
Right.
So I that's, again, it's a very personal journey, but it's been my experience, not just in my own personal experience, but everything that I've witnessed of friends of mine and colleagues of mine and people I work with who either hit a wall on their spiritual journey and get scared, turn around, stop. And the ones that really keep going and the ones that sort of are adapting it, I guess, integrating it into their lives. And that's the goal. You want to integrate it into your life.
Wow. So that's really interesting. I had no idea that like you took that 10 years and you didn't do psychedelics and then you did. So I'm learning a bit about you, which is cool. And I think like you said, the individual journey thing is a big part of spirituality, but then also the awareness of the oneness is a big part of the spiritual journey too, which is like almost the opposite, right? There, it's like
exactly right. And you have to be prepared, in a sense, to take off one jacket. But first of all, you have to be prepared to take that jacket off, right? So, but you have to have a jacket on to take it off. So you when you start skipping steps, there are lessons in all of them, and they're all painful and illuminating. And so, So
you just said something so simply stupid and brilliant at the same time, which is you have to have a jacket on to take it off. I mean, it's just like that's where philosophy comes from. Those moments where you say something and you're just like, wait a second. That's deep.
It felt deep. It felt deep to me, and I also recognize the duality of how fucking ridiculous it is. But I
love it.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's so true. It's so true. And compassion for people who I think where I'm at is just like compassion for people of where they're at in their journey, because, you know, not everyone when they were 18 years old was thinking about Joseph Campbell and trying to meet Wayne Dyer in Boston and go to Emerson College and then meet Ram Dass at 27. Some of these people, actually Wayne has passed, Ram Dass has passed. And so, you know, they're looking for their spiritual role models. And so, you know, if people ask me, where would you start? You start with books, but then you try to find role models and you pierce through and to see if you can develop relationships with people that you trust. You have to trust them, and that they're further along in some journey that you're going towards, and you need pure teachers in that way. I think one of the people that is alive right now in this moment is a great singer. I see him every year. I brought my wife last year, and it's really, really weird to be in a kirtan, which is like a call, like a singing of like a call kirtan, answer response, you know. And if you've never been to it before, God bless Sierra, like my wife, like open for like down for whatever. But when you're at like St. Andrew's Church on the Upper West Side, and you've got all these people that are just like, Om Namah Shivaya all the time, like you also have the experience of being objective and just like, yeah, this is really weird. Like but it fills your heart. And so I would definitely recommend for people to check out Krishna Das.
Interesting. Yeah.
I really love Krishna Das. I think he's such an authentic spiritual teacher. I can only give advice on things that I really believe, and that's like one. I have one.
I love that. I love that.
Person.
That's awesome. So I just want to thank Hat Powser out there saying Campbell is also gone.
Campbell's also gone. That's right. Yeah, of course.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. Hat was also telling me my mic was a little hot, so I got to tell you thank you. I appreciate that. I don't know if it's better. You tell me if it's better, Hat. But I have a question from RJ Brown. Rob from Q for You podcast says, how many steps do you believe there are? I've been reading on this a lot recently, and I've seen several say between 5 to 18. Interesting.
It's a great question. I don't know. The Hanuman Chalisa is like 108. I mean, it depends. All these numbers have numerical significances, right? They're all they all have a sort of a what I use, honestly, I use it like baseball metaphors all the time. And I've never actually asked that question to a teacher of mine. I don't know how many there are.
Well, I think based on what you're saying, it could be different for everybody, right?
Right.
I mean,
right. It's a great question. And there are people, for example, if you look up a book, it's a hard book to get. It's by Meher Baba, Meher Baba. It was the first mystic that Ram Dass, when he left Harvard, went to meet before he met Neem Karoli Baba, okay? Which is also known as Maharaji, same person. Meher Baba has a step in, the book is called God Speaks. The paths are the numbers are created so that you're on a path, so that you have a path. Just like doing Bikram, the only spiritual practice. My wife runs marathons. She ran the New York City Marathon. I feel tired thinking about it, and I haven't even run it. And but I will practice 90 minutes in a hot room and do Bikram, and I will do all the poses, and the number of those poses keep you in sequence to know where you are and where the middle is. And that's the purpose of spiritual disciplines, is that they keep you in a space. They give you spaciousness to know when you've come out of a room and now you're in another room, and they give you a sense to conceive a story. And that's the value of numbers. That's the value of a formula, right? You meditate, you have a certain amount of time to meditate, and then the goal is to become more and more and more dropped in. The last part, I would say, I think the last part is that all the spiritual practices in the end, and I have not reached this in my life, but it's what all the spiritual teachers that I met in my life say, and I believe this to be true, is that all the spiritual practices, from Bikram to yoga to meditation to drugs, they have to self-destruct, because at the end they're a method. The goal is not to become a great psychedelic astronaut, a great meditator, a great yogi. The goal is to become free. And so in the end, the last step, the hardest, heartbreaking step, is that they self-destruct and you become free. And love is also like that, right? Bhakti yoga is a yoga of love, in connection, in tandem, right? You're going to God in tandem, right? Like the way you would jump out of you know, the first time that you skydive. But you hold on to that love and together, and it's important, and you work through all your relationships. You recognize yourself, that you have a mirror, you recognize you get better, they get better, you get better, but your control of that love, that of the necessity of that love, has to dissolve so that you can become free. And that I really believe one day is maybe in this lifetime, maybe in another lifetime, maybe whatever lifetime for me. But I've always felt, even when I was 18, reading John C. Lilly's book, the methods have to self-destruct in the end.
Wow, interesting. So it's interesting even that you're talking about an end, because I'm kind of thinking like, well, there is no end, right? It just keeps going. It's just it's not even a cycle. It's just renewed, right? Transformed into something else. You can't destroy energy. You can just transform it into something else, right? So it's interesting that you're saying the end. You're saying a lot of things that I'm finding it actually interesting based on the people I talk to. Even the fact that you're talking about drugs, right, and referring them to drugs. I feel like that most of the people that I know that understand those experiences as plant medicine, usually, you know what I mean, or you know, there's references, and maybe drug just has a connotation to it, or
what I would say is that, drugs is, for me, I use that word. It's not a pejorative term, but the reason why it's drugs is that it puts you in the room with Christ. It puts you in the room with Buddha for 2 hours, for 3 hours, but you can never stay. And for me, in my life, the goal is this is a very sort of easy thing to say, but it's either to become or to be with, to not be kicked out of the room, so that you are there, you're not kicked out after a 3-hour period.
Right. You exist in that state. You exist. Yeah.
Right. Because you don't only want to associate the ideas of being profound or depth or high when it's just in that moment. You're trying, at least from the experience of all the teachers that I've had, is that you're trying to bring that into the mortgage payment, credit cards, fumbling through the Wi-Fi with my wife's iPad during the middle of a thing with my computer that goes down. You're trying to bring that into every moment. You're trying to awaken in every moment, and that's really, really hard. And it's much harder if you're going up and down and then up and down with something. It just, at least for me, it's much harder. And by the way, I love Terrence McKenna. I love Dennis McKenna. I love, his brother. I love, I've taken the hero's dose, I still take, but I take them less frequent, and even McKenna would say that in the end of his years, he talks about it so much, but I mean, he was taking mushrooms sometimes once a year, once every 18 months. So it's important to contextualize it, right? Because when you say everything is up for grabs, it's important to contextualize it for people who really, do you want to do drugs all the time, or do you want to take mushrooms all the time? Do you want to, what are your goals? Is to justify the fact that we are doing this or we're doing that? Or are you looking for something, some presence and some solace in yourself, where you don't have to make that distinction? You're sort of incorporating it and trying to infuse it together.
Wow. I just lost my thought because I was looking at the the comments. Steve Sage is out there. I want to just say hello to Steve Sage.
Hello,
He said something earlier about 18.
Lots reveals around 19 and 9s. I agree.
Yes.
Yeah, I love 19s and 9s.
Right. And Robert is saying you use it to open the door.
Exactly right. Exactly right.
I think something and what hit me, I don't know why this hit me now. You said something earlier about the difference between walkie-talkie and 5G.
Yeah.
Right. In the way we were trying to discuss something and frame it. Right. And I think the thought that I was having then, it hit me, and that's why I lost my train of thought, which is language itself. It's such a small little piece, you know. So as human beings, we have thoughts that we can't even articulate with our language, you know what I mean? So I think that was where we were at before, so my brain's just catching up.
They're brutal tools. They're really kind of sharp. They're blunt instruments, right?
Yes.
Our words are they're really blunt, and
Language is a blunt instrument. I love that.
It's a really blunt instrument. And also, by the way, I mean, full disclosure, to your audience that's watching, I am not an anti-drug person at all, anti-psychedelic person.
Right.
I would not suggest, if you're on a spiritual path, using cocaine and using heroin or those drugs. They're not going to get you anywhere. But I would suggest, if you take the time really to clean out your body. The hardest one for me, the one I was most scared of, was doing ayahuasca. And I mean, I remember just preparing for a month for that, and just having a lot of I'm feeling it now. I'm just thinking about like just eating rice and staying away from meat, staying away from heavy products, and staying away from just being attentive to what I was putting in my body.
Right.
So
that's important. And actually that you just triggered what I was thinking of before, which is what you said about, taking psychedelics less and less and less, but still taking them every once in a while.
Sure.
So my question to you is this: what you also mentioned earlier that you recommend, and really I also understand and think it's the right way, when you're doing something like psychedelics, that you're doing it with a very specific intention. You're not just like, hey man, let's go get high, let's go get wasted. So my question is, what are your intentions, your specific intentions these days?
Okay, this is a great question, and I will be completely honest about what I do, which is the same thing for the last, let's say, 7-8 years.
Okay.
I usually hold the mushroom, or I hold, the ayahuasca cup that it's contained in, and the tea, and I say a prayer, and I say it openly. I think it, but then I also explore it, and I say that I promise to be 100% honest and forthcoming with you. I won't withhold anything from you. So let's go on this journey together, and I will respect you. So please respect me.
Okay.
And I always have that dialogue, because I've had some very heavy trips and some less heavy trips and some extremely joyous experiences, but they've all come back into my life. In other words, they've stayed forever. Those trips have stayed inside my consciousness, inside my psyche forever. So
sure. Whatever information was received, right?
Yeah. So coming in honestly, your dive point is huge, and people who are huge proponents also of psychedelics, like Timothy Leary, talked about your set point, and that's a critical idea of if you're not with people that you can't feel yourself with, not the right time to do drugs. If you're with a spouse and you guys are arguing, and you think, and you haven't told her that you want to break up, not the right time to do drugs.
Right.
It's in an environment where you're able to explore, you're able to you have the right amount of support and leverage and spring to jump off the diving board. It's not, you're not jumping off of concrete. You have to have the spring in there to jump off. Otherwise you're you don't have respect. It's you're you know, it will knock you out. It will just knock you out.
Right. So you mentioned ayahuasca,
Yeah.
which is something I'm very intrigued about. I haven't been called myself to do it, but I have many friends who have done it, and I have friends who have done it many times, and I have friends who have just tried it. Tell us about your ayahuasca experience.
Well, the ayahuasca experience that I had was in 2017. I was going through a major medical situation. I had crippling arthritis. Crippling arthritis, and I started to have my joints become inflamed, my fingers, my pinkies, and I was started on a lot of drugs, some chemo drugs, like a drug called methotrexate, and I started to lose my hair, and you realize your real connection to vanity when you can be as spiritual as you want, but when you start like losing like your hair or certain things start going,
Right.
It really humbles you down, because
The
you're
ego
like,
comes back a little bit.
you're like, you know, I think I'm not really ready for this lesson, actually. And that's a great place to be.
Yeah.
So
wow.
I was taking methotrexate, and my hair was thinning, and everything was going pretty rough. And a friend who had a shaman community, and a shaman that she had known from Peru and was living outside of New York, but still in New York State, had invited me to a ceremony and said, you know, when you get off of this drug, if you can get off in February, you should join us in March. And so for a month, I got off the drug, and I got off the medication, and I was only like eating sweet potatoes and rice, and I was petrified. It was a ceremony, you know, there was a lot of chanting, and it was one of the most physically demanding psychedelics ever. The experience that I had were two profound experiences that I remember clearly to this day, very clear. The first was I had the experience of going through the birth canal and being born. And I remember sort of coming into this world and having the idea that going through the entire journey of being in my mother's womb and growing and then coming out, and what it was like prior to being born. There was a big desire for me consciously to figure out, you know, what is happening before you're in the world. And as I'm coming out of the birth canal, out of my mother, I see my parents, who are really young. They're younger than I am at the time that I'm taking ayahuasca.
Right.
And I'm seeing them, and they're excited, but they're scared. And in a flash, which would have taken 20 years of therapy, I realized that my parents were just kids. They were just kids who were they were doing the best that they knew how to do, and I could really understand and feel how scared and how young they were to bring their first child into the world. And I have never felt the same type. I've never had anger after that towards my parents. I always had a sense of being having a layer of compassion,
Right,
because
right.
they're just
So many of the stories
yeah.
are they're so profound,
Mhm.
right? And you hit on something interesting there too, because I had a guest on a few weeks ago, Ellen, who had a near death experience,
Mhm.
and she was talking about being in the ambulance and floating over her body, and actually not just seeing the ambulance driver and the person who was in the passenger seat, but feeling the feelings and the
Mhm.
thoughts that they were experiencing, which is so intriguing, and it's just so cool because I think the reason it resonates with me is because of my belief systems about consciousness and all of these things that we talk about. That all of these things exist, like you said, in the ether, uh, all the time, and it's just a matter of tuning into that. And I guess because when she was having her NDE, she was able to kind of tune into those realms, those different things. Couple of comments we got when you were talking about your hair thinning. Steve Sage said, "Tell me about it."
Steve.
Kind of dealing with vanity.
Yeah.
uh,
Steve, you
and
still look pretty though.
Steve is
You're
a good
always
look.
gonna be pretty,
He's
but
a good-looking guy.
good looking guy.
He certainly is. Tim is saying that Jesse keeps saying he's going to kidnap me to take ayahuasca for the first time. He thinks it would be helpful for me, but the more I hear about it, I might just go 100% willingly.
Yeah.
And again, I'm super intrigued, and I feel like there is going to be a moment where I know. I think, like you said, I have to know what it is I want from
Yeah.
it. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? And I think I'll be like, okay, I know what I want. Let's go. You know what I mean? And Hat is saying, I wonder what percentage of people have explosive diarrhea and projectile vomiting on ayahuasca, but never cop to it.
Listen, so a lot. I mean, you have to have a functioning. Okay, so a couple things like you need a lot of hall monitors, right? So you have to have a lot of people when you're doing it. I would say at least two
Mhm,
people,
mhm, mhm.
depending on what the group was. I mean, the group size that I did it was, uh, group size was like 15, 17.
Wow.
So of the 17, like 3 people are
Guides.
caretakers,
Yeah, yeah.
and um, you need a really good functioning bathroom, and someone has to take you to the bathroom, and how many times, and everyone gets a bucket, sort of what's going to happen. I mean, part of why you pay for it physically is part of the desire of, you're not getting it for free, right? I mean,
Mhm.
when you take 5 grams of mushrooms, it's not for free either, and that's like the McKenna heroic dose.
Right, right, right.
But you're going to pay a price, and it's good. It's good to pay a price when you're on ayahuasca, because you're it doesn't come for free. It's going to cost you something. It's going to physically cost you something, and so being physically prepared for what is coming out is part of the process. I was not a huge person. It could be because I wasn't eating any meat, any pork for a month, and just eating rice and sweet potatoes. I was not a huge vomiter, but I had to shit a lot. Like, I would say maybe, it felt like a lot, maybe like, I don't know, 3, 4 times.
Wow.
But you need someone to, you know,
Just kind of
clean
help
the
you.
bathroom, rolls the toilet. It's just, you need, everyone is in it. So
Yeah.
you need
And that's, I think, one of the things about it. It just sounds like there's so much care around the experience. It sounds like, for people who've done it right. And I was gonna. That's funny, because I was just gonna talk about something I noticed about you and who you are, and maybe it's because of all these experiences, and have made you who you are. Is the compassion
Mm,
in some of your films, especially The Girl Who Cannot Speak.
mm,
I mean, that was a short film that just had me bawling. You know what I mean? There's so much. There's so much. I don't want to say tension, but you're so engaged the whole way through, because the stories are so um, engaging, and horrible. and you're so engaged all the way through, but then when it gets to the culmination, you know, of what it's all about, it's just like, oh, you could feel it right here. Your whole freaking you know, throat chokes up. And Tim Lorenz has seen that documentary and says he loved that
Thank you,
documentary.
Tim. Thank
It
you,
really
Michael.
it really was a special piece. And
I
you
was
know,
very lucky to have you do the key art for
mm,
us early
thank
on.
you.
It was my first ever. I'd only gone to film school doing narrative films. You know, learning how to do set pieces and production design and to direct scenes and direct a film.
Right.
But I had never done a documentary before, and that was the first documentary that I'd ever done. And the key art that you did was phenomenal in capturing a girl who was underage as that poster title and that juxtaposition. And from a career perspective, it was the first time that anybody took me seriously as a director, because the film was purchased by NBC and was played on NBC.com before Peacock was a streamer. So there was that, but I also, it opened up a world of documentaries that I never thought ever was even in my purview, I guess, as a person, of making them. I love that film. I love
it's
it.
amazing.
You know, I love the film. I really do. I love the movie, and it's got very minimal sound design, except for the sound of the city, which is all authentic. It's not fake. It's real sound design in terms of, you know, what in the studio in Soho where we were recording. And there's a lot of silence and there's a lot of risk. You know, there's a lot of risk. As I have gotten older, I cut quicker. I'm paced out more.
Right.
You know what's stolen dough when it eventually comes out, and
which was my first actual real paid acting gig, by the way.
Yeah. Congratulations.
Thank you. It was awesome working with you. But you know, again, going back to the girl who cannot speak.
Yeah.
I feel like as far you were talking about the artwork, like, you know, it was so easy, you know, because of the film itself and the look of the film, you know, to do that artwork. And I was grateful to be able to just capture that, you know, with that piece of art, because it really, you know, it was good. I thought it really matched to the feel of it. I want to play the trailer. I think it's only like a minute, right? You have a trailer here. Can we play that?
Sure.
Cool. All right, so take a look at this.
Leaned in and kissed me close to my mouth. And then again, on my mouth. And I froze.
This is our secret. And you're a good girl. And don't tell anyone. Don't tell your parents. Don't tell your dad, his brother.
I just remember staring at myself in the bathroom mirror. I can still see myself, even though I was only 8.
Can you tell me your story?
Wow, so powerful. Even just the trailer is so powerful. But again, I feel like your compassion for people. I poked around a little bit on your Vimeo. I don't know if it's a recent project you were working with this artist, and you have a lot of behind the scenes of you just kind of talking to him and about what you're going to be doing.
Al Diaz.
Yeah.
He was a very famous. He still is. He's a very famous graffiti artist, and him and Jean-Michel Basquiat got together and created a very iconic graffiti tag on the Lower East Side called SAMO, SAMO. And that project, God, that is that's a feature that I've been shooting. I've been shooting that feature since 2020.
Wow.
And I've been I usually try to do 1 month a year and put it together. And it's you know, at this point I'm in a phase talking to different producers. One's Sarah Driver, who did a documentary on Basquiat and is married to Jim Jarmusch, and then applying to the Sundance Institute. It requires a lot artwork and copyright and a lot of aspects to the legality of what you're using is tough. But I already have enough to cut a film. So the truth is I'm trying to bring it to another level, right? But
I just love watching you talk to him, and the way you communicate, and just the thoughts that you have, and the way you look at what another person's doing, and kind of, you know, it's something that I feel really blessed to have found with the show. You know, I never wanted to be on screen. I was always behind the scenes, but having conversations with people and really getting to know them, and kind of holding space is such a it's such a blessing to be able to do, because I don't think a lot of people can do it. And when you hold space for someone, they open up to you. And I am so honored. I see Jerry McKeever in the audience, who was one of the people we saw in the film. Because of trust with Stefano, I was able to tell my truth. Jerry's amazing. Also, thank you for watching.
She's incredible.
I feel so blessed that you're here. Thank you for
Incredible.
coming and sharing this with us.
She's the soul of the documentary.
Yeah.
You know, people to me, people mistake Charlotte as the young girl, but she, you know, when you have so much footage of a young girl, you in the editing room, I realized I'm actually going to cut a lot of it out, because you know, you're in a real edgy line as an artist. And I think also mentally, I like being an artist as someone who can deal with subject matter that is, it could be nuclear bomby. I think there's a part, I think it's the same thing of diving into psychedelics, right? You have to be prepared that this can go, the riptide, if you're going to surf a really big wave, can break a lot of ways. And this segues into meeting Jerry. I'd known her on a previous production, and we'd always had a connection, a spiritual, emotional connection, always, and beyond the years or the time that we had spent together. And when I interviewed her, it is I always say this, and she was with us when we screened in Washington, D.C. at the Meet the Press film festival for the American Film Institute. I felt so honored that she was there. She was also on a live program at Rockefeller Center on MSNBC. But in the documentary, she's such a through line. She's the heart of that. And the way that I had created the documentary was that as she starts to speak and she starts to come up artistically, everyone else starts to unfold. Their petals can start to come off, their branches, their leaves can, but she's the first one, the hardest person to have and to introduce, where the audience sort of knows where you're going to go, but the hardest one to introduce is someone's got to go first. And Jerry is the first person to share her truth, and it creates an opening for every other girl to speak candidly about their experience. She is God. I just saw her in September in Manhattan, and we are friends to this day. It's been
she's incredible. She's a great woman. I've been on a couple of different sets with her, and she's just one of those vibrations that you just love. I just want to acknowledge some of the comments we had earlier. You were talking about Tim said he loved the documentary, and he said it hit him a bit hard considering his ex-wife passed. So Tim is just for you, because you're like a newbie here, Tim has been here since day one.
Mm.
He's been watching the show. He was friends with Jesse Blaze, and now he's a friend of mine. He's in Brazil. He makes my show international, which I love. But he was on the show one point, and he was talking about his ex-wife who had 25 different personalities. So the story was really interesting because one of the personalities, for instance, like had diabetes, and she would like go to the doctor and her blood levels would be at a certain way when she was that person. And it's really interesting, the physiology of it all, and that whole story. But Tim is just relating to it. And Hat is out there saying it's really a miracle. Most of us don't end up strung out and OD'd, considering the amount of abuse that we underwent as children. And it is really a miracle. And I think you know, the girls in the movie, you know, you see, you know, that's a lot of strength to sit there and talk about something like that. So you can see
yeah, and it cuts through it's an equalizer, because it cuts through social class. It cuts through you know, whether you're rich or you're poor, culturally, you know, it's not, you don't have an advantage in a lot of ways. It happens. I see a lot of people who came from affluent families and people who were not affluent. Culturally, I mean, across the board, you know, in terms of whether you're American or that's another reason.
And that's kind of what Hat was saying. Like, she's not even saying, she's just saying we underwent as children, like everybody is we, you know, like there's no, you know, race or financial status or anything like that. Wow. Stefano, we haven't even begun. I wanted to share your story with my audience. I wanted to talk about how you were born in Canada and you moved to Italy and all of this stuff. I watched your interview with Russ Camarda on his podcast just today when I was looking through stuff, and I also love Russ so much. So I was like, oh my God, two of my favorite guys talking. I gotta watch this. But we haven't even gotten to talk about that. So I'm gonna have to invite you back on the show. And Hat is out there saying, I believe for years that MPD is actually a coping mechanism which other personalities from other timelines respond to an energetic distress call. All hands on deck. Oh, Hat, I love what you're talking about. I mean, I don't love it, but I love the idea of that you're introducing there. And that's what I love about. Say that again. I'm sorry.
To cope as a coping mechanism, and your nervous system is cope.
Oh, yeah, it's crazy. I just want to share this right now quickly as we kind of sign off. And I definitely want to have you back. Hopefully you'll come back so we can talk about more about what you do and your acting. I love the fact that we stayed on all of the kind of spiritual stuff and consciousness.
What's the theme of the show, Michael? It's the theme.
It is the theme of the show. It is the theme of the show. I'm going to put up your website here down at the bottom of the screen. And this is more of your, it's not your spirituality stuff. It's your actual
work stuff,
your acting, your directing. I didn't even get to talk about the shows that you were on and all of these great things. But I love talking to you, man. You're so awesome to talk to. And it's just a lot of fun. Let me put you in the green room. Let me sign off the show. Don't go anywhere so I can talk to you and we can talk about catching up a little bit. And I can sign off my show. But thank you for being here so much. We'll have you back again. We'll talk about another date.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Totally. All right. See ya. Okay. Wow. That's a good one. Hold on. I got to wheel back a little bit here. I got to take in my breath. Everybody. Oh, that was so good. What a great connection. What a great guy. Great story. We are all one. It's so cool to know that, like, when I meet somebody that I think is awesome and cool, and that they're me and I am them, and we are all one. And I just love that. I see some comments here. Thank you so much from Tim. Thank you from Hat. Thank you two guys, or guys and ladies, for being here. Always on the live stream of consciousness. You can't even know how much it means to me that you guys show up here all the time and listen to these conversations that I'm enjoying. Next week I will be away. I have an event I've been working on at the studio. It's the Long Island Gala event that I had last year. I know I did my show from the event last year, but it was pretty bad with the bandwidth, so I'm just gonna take the week off. I'm gonna enjoy a night at Ohika Castle, which is a great place here on Long Island, and I will be back the following week with I have the following week. The following week is not booked yet. Ooh, so I have actually some interesting people coming up after that, but next week is a mystery until I book somebody. Jerry, thank you for being here so much. Great conversation, great show. Jerry, I would love for you to subscribe. You've got an opportunity for me to ring the bell. I have a bell here that I ring when people subscribe and they tell me, and I see Janice out there giving us the heart. I will see you guys I won't see you next week. See, I'm saying stuff that I just say every week because it's like a routine, but let me take a breath and let me say, I'll see you guys November 2nd. I believe that's the next date. And it'll be a surprise who's with me. Thank you guys as always for being here. Peace out and see you then.